The Ironton 5x8 heavy-duty utility trailer with a gross vehicle weight of over 1,900 pounds and a total payload capacity of over 1,700 pounds.
So the goal today is to assemble the Ironton 5x8 heavy-duty trailer with a total capacity of 1,715 pounds. So I ordered this a couple weeks ago. Just showed up today, these 3 boxes. This box right here weighs about 110 pounds, and these boxes are, probably 65 pounds or so. Actually, I'd have my 17-year-old son help me carry them out in my backyard, just a little bit too heavy. But anyway, I did open up the big box, and you can see you got the 2 tires, got the leaf springs, and a box full of nuts and bolts. I'm guessing, I haven't opened up this one. Maybe that's the tail lights, that's my guess. Anyhow, so I'm going to start taking things apart, just kind of laying it out, and come back in just a moment. Of course, the first step really is reading the instruction manual. This little book here. I did browse over it a little bit. A little bit of a small print size, but should be okay. I'm sure once I start laying things out, I'll be able to figure it out. I'm not really much of a person who enjoys reading instruction manuals, but it should be fine. As long as all the parts are here, we'll make it work. My goal is just to loosely tighten all the nuts and bolts. I figure it's going to take a little adjustment at the end. So let's go ahead and start laying out the pieces. So we've taken everything out of the boxes. You can see just line it up on the ground. I have to say, at this point in the assembly process is my least favorite. Just looking at all these parts on the ground, thinking, how the heck do they all go together? I'm sure in about 30 minutes everything will be fine when I start just looking at the instructions. It just seems like a lot of parts. And I was right. There were the lights and license plate holder in this box, reflectors. Okay, so I'm going to use these blocks right here. These heavy concrete blocks. Oh yeah, woohoo! It's amazing. Okay, they're actually fiberglass. Pretty cool, huh? Prevents me from hurting my back. Alright, back in a second when I start. Well, I've been at it now for about 20-25 minutes. I've laid out the biggest pieces. I have to say, this pretty heavy duty metal. I mean, it looks thin, but you pick it up and it's heavy. So everything was going great. Kind of lucked out, these little concrete, these fiberglass fake concrete. They got these little grooves right there. They fit perfectly. So here's the diagram of the trailer. It looks like the M10 25 bolt, 54 of them, part L. And there's 72 nuts and 72 washers. So, by process of elimination, it must be these 2 bags right there. So that's what I'm going to be using. Alright, here's a little tip. Just take all your nuts and screws and dump them in the container. That's easy. Just like winning the slots in Las Vegas. And a bucket of bullets. Probably worth more actually than a bunch of nickels. Okay, well, I'm still at it. I've got 4 bolts in. It's going to take me a little while to get all these in, but I'm going to go ahead and put with the heads on top. So this will be the top of the trailer. And I'll be flipping it over once I get all these nuts and bolts in place. That way I can attach these pieces here, the tongue. Well, I did pretty good here. I got all the nuts and bolts in for the cross members. And then I just realized here that I was putting these in. I don't know if you can see that or not, but this is actually supposed to go the other way. I'm going to push it up to the bottom, put the bolt on the, the nut on the inside. So I discovered that about halfway through, so I'm going to have about 4 nuts and bolts to remove and do the correct way. I should point out here also, I was trying a little dilemma. I was trying to figure out where the flathead bolts were supposed to go. I finally discovered that they actually go for the leaf springs. I'm going to hold those on after I probably be flipping it over when I put those on. Yeah, there's 8 of these. I'll just put those aside for now and correct my mistake here. I'll be back in a few minutes. I have now inverted all the nuts and bolts the proper direction and added the additional nuts and bolts for the axle here. So loosely attaching all the members has gone quite quickly. I'd say I've only been working on it for what, maybe an hour, hour and a half. Of course I haven't tightened any of the bolts. They're all just very loose. Alright, so before we tighten down all the bolts, we want to make sure that it's totally square. Because the last thing we need is a lopsided trailer. So I initially tried to use the tape measure. I am working by myself. It didn't seem to work too well. So here's plan B. Just going to use a T-square here. And we're going to put it on the corners. I actually given it a try. It worked quite well. I was actually able to straighten out the trailer. So I'm going to just go ahead and show you how it's done. So we're going to go ahead and start at the back of the trailer. Right here. This right corner. Got the T-square. Just going to line it. Just going to hold it so it's that portion is flush with the straight metal. And you can see over here, it's actually touching right there. So there's a gap right there, meaning the trailer is not straight. So let me think about this for a second. I actually need to push this member that way, just a little bit. The bolts are, I just tightened just a little bit, but they're still loose. So let's measure it again. Okay, let's see. It's tough to do with one hand. Okay, so now we have a little bit of a gap there. I am just gonna, just a tad more. Just gonna grab the frame right there. Alright, let's see if that was enough. Put it back. Okay, so actually it might have been, let's see, there's a little bit of gap there. Gap. I'm not going to count that because the metal sticks out, but it's pretty close. Let's go over and check the other side. See how that side looks. Okay. This one, yeah, it's just a tiny little gap. I think it looks good. I think it's level. I think it's square. Alright, so we'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and tighten down the bolts. We'll come back and just... I finally tightened all the bolts down, the nuts and bolts. I have to say that was probably the longest part of the project so far. That was a lot of nuts and bolts. But I have to say that the black coating paint actually did a pretty good job at protecting the sharp edges, so I was very happy with that.
The next step is installing the axle.
So we're going to put on,
You can see I'm holding the axle in my hand right now.
the axle.
There's actually a little, I'll call it a little nipple sticking out of the top of the leaf spring. And when I set this axle down,
Nut sticking out.
it goes into a little opening on the leaf spring. That way you know it's in there perfectly. It's not going to move around. It's totally perfectly aligned. And there's a little U-bolt. There's a square plate. Looks like it's galvanized. It goes underneath the leaf spring, and then you have the two U-bolts that you secure the leaf spring to that square plate.
I'd like to show you something.
And you can see I've got the bucket of bolts. What's left? It's getting much leaner, which is a big positive thing.
Not too many left.
The fewer nuts and bolts, the better. As long as you have at least one left for the last hole.